Hello! This is HookedByHappenstance. I'm Kendra, and it is time for chapter 38 of Yarn Tales. Yarn Tales is my ongoing series here at HookedByHappenstance where I read books, I tell you a bit about them, then I apply silly Kendra rules and add a segment to my reading Shawl. I also, when I'm doing a readathon, add some beads into the mix, and today's book was part of a readathon. So the book we're going to talk about today is called In Her Secret Fantasy by Marie Trainor. Treanor, T-R-E-A-N-O-R. So I read this book via ebook from Libby, which is Overdrive's app, and I read it on my phone. The genres for this book are fantasy / fiction / romance. So let me explain my reasoning behind choosing this book. I read this book as part of Fantasy-a-thon, which was a readathon I took part in during April, and the point of Fantasy-a-thon was about 10 days long for you to try and read more fantasy books. There were some different challenges along the way as well, and one of the challenges was to read a book that's outside of your normal reading comfort zone. So a lot of people were reading things like middle grade or graphic novels or what have you. But the thing is, I read fairly broadly as far as age range. I read adult, I read YA, I read middle grade, because I read with my kids a lot, so I read like the full gamut of types of books as far as that is concerned. And then as far as genres, since it was already fantasy based, that kind of cuts down your options of trying to pick like a genre outside of what I usually read, so I was thinking, what could I do? Well, I realized I could read a trashy romance novel, like a Harlequin style romance novel, because those are not books that I ordinarily read, like at all. Don't really like them, but I don't have a distaste for them the way I do for like a cop mystery. Though, this book, as we'll talk about, turned out to be a lot more cop mystery and a lot less trashy romance. So the reason I picked this particular book, I was like, how do I even choose which trashy romance novel I'm gonna get? Like, I was thinking that I wanted, like, Fabio hair blowing on the cover. Like, there's gotta be some fantasy types of those books, right? I know I'm probably dating myself. Fabio hasn't been on the cover of a book in, like, 25 years. But anyways, I searched in my app, through the search function, I looked up books that were fantasy and romance. And I was like, I'm just gonna scroll through the like list that it provides me, and I'm gonna pick the first book that has like a shirtless man on the cover, basically, that looks like a romance. So this book came up to the top of her list, In Her Secret Fantasy. Shirtless man, like woman in short shorts in an embrace, with weird sea lion ottery things in the background and kind of a glimpse of a castle and hills. And I was like, what's up with the sea life, right? So it had mentioned in the synopsis that there were selkies involved. So I was like, selkies, aren't those like a mystical kind of creature? Maybe this book's gonna be kind of like, just is somebody a shapeshifter, or like what's gonna happen? Maybe that'll be interesting. So I start reading, find out the book is about Aiden, who is a man who wants to get out of his job as a cop, and he's going undercover back to his hometown, where he finds out that things have changed in the years he's been away. His parents are ailing, his sister is overwhelmed. Oh, bad times, right? Then he meets Chrissy Lennox, former parole officer, who now runs a halfway house for mischief makers, right? And it was just, I don't know, it was laughable. Like, I was reading this in bed, the first 2 chapters, and literally laughing out loud, and I was worried I was gonna wake my kids up, because it was just so absurd and over the top. And not quite, though, in the way that I had expected. So then I assumed, from the other books that I had read that had been like, I don't know, steamy? Like, I've read plenty of steamy books. So I assumed this book was just gonna be like, boom, 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 things going on. It was not. It was mostly like this kind of mystery of something that's going on in the town. And then there would be like these random large chunks of story where the woman would be gazing out the window at the sea lions, I think is what they're based on. I can't even remember, because I didn't do a very good job of describing that part. The sea life that was looking at her from the beach, and it felt as though the sea lion Selkie thing was checking her out, and she would then consider this option. Should she consider it? No, then she wouldn't actually even think about that. She would just move along to the next thing. And then, like, there's a male and a female Selkie, and the female has apparently been, like, having relations with the guy since he was in high school? Weird. And poorly explained. The book was so strange, and it turned out it was mostly just like a cop mystery story, and I made it 50% of the way through and I DNF'd it because I gotten everything I needed. It was 50% of the way through the book when this couple, the human couple, ends up on a boat, and there is steaminess, but it's not very steamy. Considering the books that I've read, like, after, way steamier. 50 Shades of Grey, way steamier. This book, no, it's really, really not. And it was 50% of the way through, and I have a feeling that was like one of maybe 2 of those sorts of scenes in this book. I assumed, like, maybe I've been wrong. The trashy romance novels were just like sex scenes. Like, that's what I just assumed they all were. That's part of the reason I didn't read them, is because I just didn't feel like I needed that in my life. But maybe they're not. Are they not? If you're a person who reads a lot of romance? I don't know. And there wasn't a lot of romancing either. So it wasn't like they were just like closed door scenes, because I know that's a thing that happens in a number of books. No, there was just none of that. It was very strange. I didn't really get why it was put where it was. And maybe you would think that it was because when I looked up romance, maybe these weren't that kind of romance. But then I read the author's note at the end that was talking about it, and the way it described the kind of books that it claims this author writes, including this one, that was not the kind of book I got out of it. So I was just done with it. It was a humorous experience. I found out what the Selkies were for, and the answer was ew and no. That was what they were for. And I don't know how the mystery ended, but you know what? I didn't really care. And it is worthy of note that this book is a sequel. This is the second book in a series. Did I really miss out by not reading the first? No, because the first book was a complete standalone about the guy being an undercover cop or something in a separate storyline, from what it sounded like. So, I will not be reading any more books from this series. I will probably give trashy romance a try again. If you have trashy romance recommendations, let me know down below. And maybe something that's more in the vein I was thinking I was getting. But before that, let me show you my reading shawl. So during this chapter of the shawl, I have made a few changes in things. I realized that I was not going to probably get through a Life's Library book in the month of April, just like I didn't in March because of reasons. I am reading one during April, but it's just taking me a long time. So I decided that I didn't really need to have a yarn set aside for that. But I was running out of yarn for physical books because I was reading way more physical books than I had anticipated. When I bought the yarn for these shawls, I bought 2 skeins of yarn for audiobooks, 1 for physical books, and 1 for books for my Life's Library subscription. And then one for books for my kids, because I bought 5 skeins of yarn. But I wasn't making it through that many Life's Library books. And I had exhausted, during this chapter, my supply of yarn for my physical books. So I decided that I will be using the color for the Life's Library books for physical books as well. So there'll be 2 colors in the shawl for physical books, and that's fine. I actually am really liking the way that it kind of mixes up the shawl. So it's all curled up. So here is what we're looking at. This bottom segment here, turn up here, this top segment here, is the segment for this book. Since I DNF'd it, what I do is I just do the patterned row, because each of the yarns has its own special patterned row. I do the patterned row for the kind of book. So this is the patterned row for a physical book that I read by myself, and then I just do this 1 row of single crochet to kind of like bind it off from the next stripe, segment, chapter, what have you, that's going to go after it. If this were a book that had stars, the following rows, this would be star number 1, and then it would be textured single crochet after that for the number of stars, which could give you a very thick stripe, as you see here. So I decided also to add beads for this segment because it was part of Fantasy-a-thon, it was part of a readathon. So I threw these gold kind of, they're just plain gold, not seed beads, they're like a larger size. They came out of an unmarked tube, so I don't even know what size beads they are, but they are a size that would let DK yarn fit through them, which I exhausted my entire bead stash, and I've had a very difficult time finding beads that I had in stash that would let DK yarn through them, especially this Low Did It on the Simple DK, which is super, super, super smooshy. And I really, really, really like it. Like, it has so much loft to it. I would definitely recommend this base to other people. So, the colors that I used is Low Did It in this green, which is called Tea on the Green. And then I've added this brown, which is called Bourbon. And I think it's gonna do a really nice job of pulling out the browns in the waist colorway from Cattails and just mixing things up a little. So this shawl, while it is overarching in my head, green colored, is probably only about half green. But I think it's gonna turn out super nice. And I just love the way all the colors are playing with this green man color. That pop of like super, super bright green just makes me really, really happy. Unlike this book, which was mostly comical in its terribleness. Now I'm sure that if this is the genre you like reading, and really I guess if you like reading kind of like cop mystery books, maybe this book would have been better. But I don't, and that was not what I was trying to get into. So for me, it was not a great book. Do not recommend. If you want to make sure you don't miss out on any of the other chapters of Yarn Tales, you can go ahead and subscribe down below because I don't post on a regulated schedule. So the best way to make sure you don't miss them is they will just pop into your subscription feed if you subscribe. Also, there is a playlist here on the channel if you feel like you've missed any chapters in the past and want to catch up. That is a good way to do that. And I will see you all next time. Bye!